Terrorism in Nigeria is expensive. Boko Haram has operated for over 15 years, while ISWAP controls stretches of the Lake Chad Basin, and terrorists in northwest Nigeria sustain relentless cycles of attacks that have emptied entire villages. All of this requires weapons, vehicles, safe houses across ungoverned territory, and the means to keep hundreds of fighters fed and loyal over years, sometimes decades. Every attack, recruitment campaign, weapons purchase, and propaganda operation depends on money. So where does all the money come from? Who does the law hold responsible? And how far does Nigeria's legal framework actually go in trying to stop it? Let's break this down. Terrorist groups in Nigeria do not rely on a single source of funding. The most obvious of these is kidnapping for ransom. Between May 2023 and April 2024, Nigerians paid a total of 2.23 trillion naira in ransom, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. To put that in perspective, it is roughly what the federal government budgeted for education that year. What makes this especially significant is that kidnapping for ransom has become a structured enterprise, complete with intermediaries and negotiators profiting alongside the terrorists. Beyond ransom, taxation and extortion are equally systemic. In the Northeast, ISWAP collects levies from fishers, farmers, and livestock owners across the Lake Chad Basin. It is estimated that ISWAP earns $191 million annually from these taxes alone, which is more than 10 times the total tax revenue Borno State generated in 2024. In 2024, Human Angle found that ISWAP made at least 250 million naira from fish traders alone in Baga. Communities across Zamfara also collectively pay over 50 million naira to armed groups before every harvest simply to access their own farmlands. Another important stream is gold mining and smuggling, which connects the local terror economies to global markets. The Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative estimates that Nigeria loses $9 billion annually to illegal mining and gold smuggling. In Zamfara specifically, terrorists tax miners at 10% of output or force them into direct collaboration. These extortions form a reliable revenue system that rivals the finances of the states in which these terror groups operate. A less obvious source of funding is wildlife. A 2025 Human Angle investigation found that illegal wildlife trade, from elephants to warthogs, is financing terrorism in Nigeria as terrorists create ungoverned spaces that facilitate poaching. The proceeds then flow back into their operations. Additionally, IPOB draws diaspora funding from sympathizers in various countries as identified by the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. Cryptocurrency transfers have also been documented as a growing channel for financing violence in the Southeast. Together, these streams show that terrorism financing in Nigeria is deliberate and goes well beyond Nigerian borders. Understanding where the money comes from makes the legal response easier to follow. The Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022 replaced the earlier 2011 law and established a single, unified framework for terrorism and its financing. The core prohibition is in Section 2. It says all financing of terrorism is illegal, whether done directly or indirectly, inside or outside Nigeria. Section 21 defines the offense specifically. A person commits terrorism financing by providing, collecting, soliciting, or making available any funds, property, or services, knowing they will be used to support a terrorist or terrorist group. Crucially, the mere availability of resources is sufficient for conviction. It does not matter whether or not the money was ultimately used in an actual attack. As regards penalties, any individual convicted under Section 21 faces life imprisonment. A corporate body faces a minimum fine of 200 million naira, imprisonment of its principal officers for at least 20 years, and the winding up of the entity. Under Section 24, kidnapping, hostage-taking, and hijacking are treated as terrorism financing offenses, with the death penalty applying where a death occurs. The Act distributes enforcement responsibilities across 3 bodies. Designating terrorism financiers and freezing their assets is the mandate of the Nigeria Sanctions Committee, chaired by the Attorney General. Coordinating intelligence and counterterrorism policy across all security agencies falls to the Nigeria Counterterrorism Center. And when banks and other institutions file suspicious transaction reports, it is the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit that receives, analyzes, and acts on them. The law does not stop at banks. Under the Act, lawyers, accountants, car dealers, and real estate agents are required to report suspicious transactions to the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit within 24 hours. They are then required to freeze any listed assets and conduct due diligence on their customers. Failure to do so carries fines, license revocation, and imprisonment. This is one of the most significant departures from the 2011 law it replaced. Despite low implementation rates, the law is being applied. In July 2025, 44 Boko Haram members were sentenced to 30 years for financing terrorist activities, bringing the total terrorism-related convictions in Nigeria to 785. These cases show that the law is being used. The challenge, however, is structural. Nigeria allocated 6.57 trillion naira to security in 2025, the largest in the country's history, while 2.2 trillion naira was simultaneously being paid to kidnappers in a single year. Additionally, much of terrorism financing moves entirely outside the formal financial system through cash, livestock, barter, and smuggling routes that leave no digital traces. So even with a well-designed law, tracking the money becomes difficult. Terrorism financing in Nigeria is a web of ransom payments, farming levies, gold smuggling, fish taxes, and diaspora transfers, each adapted to the terrain and the group running it. The Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act gives authorities broad powers to follow the money, freeze assets, and prosecute those who finance violence. But laws do not enforce themselves. Their effectiveness depends on whether investigations are pursued consistently, financial networks are disrupted, and politically connected suspects are treated no differently from ordinary offenders.